It's been almost a month since my official flight duties for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game Commercial Fisheries ended, and I've been home most of that time working on home projects. But the other day, the game biologist for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game called me up and asked me if I wanted to do some game surveys, specifically mountain goat surveys. Took me all of 2 seconds to say yes. Actually, it didn't take me that long to say yes. Well, anyway, today is October 7th, Friday, and it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to head out and do some goat surveys over on the mainland across from Petersburg. We tried to do them yesterday, the 6th, but it was foggy in the morning. We couldn't get off early in the morning to get out. By the time we did get out, it hadn't been foggy over on the mountains where the goats are, and it had been sunny all morning there. So the goats, they were all hiding in the bushes there. So we turned around, came back, and tried to go out in the early afternoon, about 4 o'clock or so, when the goats started coming back out to feed and getting out in the open again. Had a few technical difficulties. The biologist had some technical difficulties with his equipment, and we wound up coming back. We planned on going out early this morning again, but the fog was even thicker this morning, so we postponed that. And like I said, now it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're going to head out and do some goat surveys. Well, we're going to do the usual takeoff from the harbor at Petersburg in the Wrangell Narrows and head out. And instead of turning to the right or the left like we usually do when we get outside the Wrangell Narrows and over into Frederick Sound, we're going to head straight across there to the mainland, the mountains you see off in the distance. Oh, it's about 4 or 5 miles across from the mouth of the Wrangell Narrows here, Petersburg, over to Horn Cliffs, which is the mountains you see just to the right of center there, right on the water. That's where we're going to start. Coming up on McDonald Islands right now, good place to catch halibut. Horn Cliffs is just right behind it. We're coming on that. Now, Horn Cliffs goes up to about 3,000 feet here, and it's almost vertical down into the water, and it runs down to about 1,100 feet below sea level right there just off those. There's a waterfall that comes off of Horn Cliffs there that I've run the boat up underneath, and you could stand on the bow of the boat and take a shower under the waterfall. It's that steep. So as I said, this portion of the Horn Cliffs is about 3,000 feet above sea level, a little bit more on some of the peaks. The goats can be at any level along here, all the way down to the water. So we'll be able to get a chance to look at them. I'm going to make my first pass here along the edge, about 2,500 feet, and we're going to look down from there. They're pretty heavy timber in places along here, and the goats, some of them are out in the open on the cliffs, and some of them are down in the bushes. So we'll make a pass along here about 2,500 feet, and then we'll come back at a higher elevation and look at the tops of the peaks and the tops of the ridges. So this body of water here is Frederick Sound, the east section of Frederick Sound. This is, of course, the mainland right here that we're flying adjacent to now. Mitkoff Island is on the far right, and just ahead of us in the center of the screen, or just to the right of the center of the screen, is what's called Dry Pass, and that is kind of the end of Frederick Sound, and Dry Pass goes through into the Stikine River, the middle arm of the Stikine River, and Sumner Straits and Wrangell in the distance. Game biologists have this area divided up into 4 sections. The first section is right here at Horn Cliffs, and it runs up here to Japonski Creek, where it divides it between the next area, which is just over the horizon there. So I'm going to come up here to Japonski Creek and turn around and come back and do several passes here over the Horn Cliffs area in the different ridges and things like that here, looking for goats. Somebody on U.S. government looked at the map, and Japonski Creek was identified as Jap Creek, so they decided that was a derogatory term and it was offensive to somebody somewhere, and so they changed the official name of Japonski Creek to Japan Creek instead. So they didn't really check very far, and to avoid hurting anybody's feelings and deciding that it was a derogatory term, they changed Japonski Creek to Japan Creek. So I don't know how the Polish people feel about having one of their landmarks renamed for them so that it doesn't hurt their feelings, but anyway, that's what happens. You can see the valley that runs up here that kind of separates this area from the one that's to the farther south there, that towards Laconnie Bay. Anyway, I'm going to turn around here and head back along these ridges, and we're going to count goats here and see what we can see. It gets kind of tough. This is tough flying conditions here. The sun angle this time of the year is getting pretty low in the sky, and when I turn back into the sun, I'm just about blind. So the goats stand out like diamonds in the rough out there when they're on the sunny side of the hill and you're looking with the sun behind you, but when you're going the other direction, they're kind of hard to see sometimes. So it takes a little bit to see them. And it takes a little bit of attention to fly here when you're running into the sun. You can see with the camera, but when I'm actually physically flying, personally, you can't see anything in there. It's just about blind when you're flying into the sun. So this camera didn't exactly give me the best view of what I'd hoped to get out here when we were flying today. And we can't see the goats, although they get kind of hard to see anyway with the cameras with the wide angle lenses on them. But anyway, I was kind of disappointed in the view we got from this camera. I had another camera set up that would have given me a better view, but I got invested in what I was doing. I was having a good time and I was busy, and it took a lot of attention to fly here, and I just forgot to turn the other camera on. And again, I had my cell phone. I could have taken some pictures with the cell phone camera, but it's hard to divide your attention here when you're flying like this between flying and taking pictures with the cell phone camera. So anyway, hopefully I'll get some better pictures the next time we get out. But anyway, I had a good day flying here, so that was fun. There are several goats scattered along this ridgeline here, some individuals, and some of them are down in the bushes. There's a lot of brush and a lot of timber on this ridgeline. Some of them are kind of hiding in that a little bit. So we got to take a close look, sometimes circle around and see how many are there. There are also groups of goats in here, and usually the groups are females and kids, adult females with young ones. So when we get a group of them, 6, 8, or whatever, we'll take a closer look at them try to differentiate between the adults and the young ones to make sure what the recruitment is, what the new ones coming on are. Most of the flying that I do is over the water, either over the open water looking for fish and counting boats, or flying up streams and stuff counting fish. Once in a great while we'll get a flight where we'll fly through some of the passes here and some of the interior areas here, and with some of the guys, and we'll do an ancillary count of goats. It's an official count. But there are goats virtually from one end of this area, from 60 miles south of us up to as far north as I've gone, scattered out in different areas. This area is the one that they do the counts in because it's the one that gets the most hunting pressure. We get people both, well, there are several hunting guides out of Petersburg and out of this area that bring clients over here to hunt goats, but there are also quite a few people out of Petersburg that come over here to hunt goats. It's a relatively accessible area. Some of them will come over in the winter when the snow's on and the goats push down onto the beach or down into the timber, and they'll come over here in a boat, tie up on the beach, and hunt them from there. Some of them will actually come back in this time of the year or earlier and come in on the beach and then hike up into these mountains. So this area gets quite a bit of hunting pressure, and that's why it's concentrated on the surveys here, is to keep track of the population in this area to make sure it doesn't get too depressed. Now we're looking north and west here. This is Frederick Sound. Mainland is on the right side here, as far up as you can see in the distance, and then Kupernoff Island is right there from the center of the screen to the left. Frederick Sound goes up there as far as you can see, and that's about 25 miles or so, and then it takes kind of a hard left turn and goes out about 60 miles to the west, where it intersects into Chatham Strait, where that mountain on under the nose comes down. The far distant one under the nose comes down and hits the water. That's Cape Fanshawe, and beyond that is Stevens Passage, which runs up towards Juneau. Juneau is about 130 miles from here. I'm about 3,500 feet here now. We've climbed up onto the top of these ridges, just right on the top of them, and I'm following along the ridges here now, looking for goats on the backside that we didn't see on the first trips, and re-looking in some of the other areas. And looking over the nose now, we're looking south again, Frederick Sound and the dry straits there in the distance. Wrangell is about 45 miles from here. We finished up with the Horn Cliffs section of the survey, and we moved down now to the Lacani Bay survey section. You can see the dry straits on the far right there, and the north arm of the Stikine River comes out right here. You can see the discolored water there on the right side is Tidal Flats. It's pretty shallow water there, and a lot of disturbed water coming out of the Stikine River right there. And then right on the right side of the nose is the outlet to Lacani Bay, Lacani Glacier. The white things, or blue-white things you see down there, are icebergs that come off of the glacier. So we're circling around this little knob here looking for goats. We saw one goat on one of the peaks up there where it was open, but it was kind of almost a waste of time to do the rest of this because it was all heavy timber in here, and you couldn't see any goats in here if they wanted to. I think goats come in here in the wintertime when the heavy snow is on the high peaks and stuff, and get in the timber where they're protected and actually come down into Lacani Bay. We're looking up in Lacani Bay now, and you can see the LeConte Glacier right there, just almost dead center. That's the southernmost tidewater glacier in the United States. I'm flying the third area that we survey here now. This is called Thunder Ridge, and it's a long ridge that comes back from Horn Cliffs and parallels Lacani Bay and comes all the way back into the Alaska Range. And this is where most of the goats are, where we see. I'm starting out here at about 3,000 feet, flying the lower ridges and stuff, taking a good look at that, and then I'll vary my altitude up to about 3,500 feet to 4,000 feet back when we get into the back here. Now this was real interesting flying, really intense flying. We're doing a lot of circles here. I'm flying about 50, 60 miles an hour, doing a lot of turns. When we see goats, we have to circle over them so we can get a good count of them. We saw groups of them that were 25 or 30 animals, and so we try to get a good count to differentiate between the adults and the juveniles. And there's a lot of area in here where there are goats where we'd circle around, and we'd fly over one knob, and then we'd see some more on the other side and have to circle back to it. So I'm flying right on the edge. I've got good airspeed here, safe airspeed at 50 to 60 miles an hour, but when you start doing tight turns and stuff in here, and I'm skidding so that I can keep the animals in view of the guy in the back seat that's doing the counting, it's very easy to lose track of things and to run into a stall spin incident like this. So it's a pretty intense flying. You have to be pretty attentive to this. And we're right below the peaks here on some of these. There's places here where the ground is less than 100 feet below me on one side of the airplane and 2,000 feet below me on the other side of the airplane. The sun is real low on the horizon behind me, so when I turn into the sun back to the west, I'm just about blind, and we got peaks that's mountains that stick up above the altitude that I'm flying. So it's pretty intense flying right here. Fortunately, there's no wind today. It's almost absolutely flat calm, so we don't have to worry about turbulence, downdrafts, anything like that. But it's intense. It was fun. Oh, we're back farther into the mountain range now on Thunder Ridge. We're running right back into the high peaks. I'm flying between 3,500 feet elevation and 4,000 feet elevation, and the mountains around me go up to 6,000 feet here. There's some real tight canyons that I'm flying through, navigating. There's places here where we saw goats, and I had to fly out quite a ways to make a safe turn to come back in to get better counts on them. And as we flew over some of these ridges, we'd see a bunch of goats in one spot, and then we'd come back over to get another count of them to make sure we had a good count of them, and then we'd see some more. And it seemed like every time we crossed over a ridge, they were popping up, and we'd go back and hit the same area and then see more of them the second time and even the third time back. So this was a lot of fun. Again, it's the same thing. I'm flying, I've got one notch of flaps down. I'm flying about 50, 60 miles an hour and doing a lot of tight turns, and we're right in close, maneuvering to the mountains. We're staying away from the goats as much as possible, so we're not disturbing them any more than we have to. But we've got goats on top of these peaks that you can't see till you get up high, and then there's goats down low on these cliffs and stuff that you can't see them if you're too far away and too high. Anyway, it was interesting. Like I said, I got right here now, there's a peak to the left of me that's higher than I am, and the sun is right there in my face and my eyes, so I have to be real careful there that I don't run into something solider than air. I'm up about 4,500 feet to 5,000 feet now, getting back in some of these farther canyons. This is about as far as the goats get back into. There are probably some back in here into the icebergs and into the glaciers, but mostly they're out here where they get some vegetation and stuff. So anyway, we're still flying and still counting animals. The sun is getting pretty low on the horizon. It's getting kind of hard to see them on the back sides of some of these hills, and there's a lot of shadows in the trees and stuff when we get around into the timber. Battery's going to die on the camera here pretty soon, so we're not going to get a whole lot of recording done on it. I think there's a few more minutes, but we flew about 25 minutes or so after the camera died, and we got quite a few more goats counted in there and saw some more country. Well, anyway, it was a beautiful flight. It was a lot of fun. hopefully we'll be able to do it again in a few days. Today it's been raining and the wind has been blowing. It's a perfect day to sit inside here and edit a video. We had about 25, 30 mile an hour winds today, and we've had over almost 2 inches of rain. It's the last 24 hours. It's pretty intense rain. So tomorrow it's supposed to clear up, and hopefully we'll get a chance to get out and do another survey and see some more goats and see some more country. As I said, the battery's about ready to die on the camera, and so we flew around a little bit more after this into a couple other spots and counted some more goats. But on the way back to Petersburg, the sun was right in our face. We were headed due west, and it was a beautiful sunset, just perfect. Anyway, it was a great day, and I hope you enjoyed what of it I had to share here.